Well, look, it's the season finale of season 2. I'm blowing my load for Jimmy Rings variations, so anytime you hear a male name starting with J and some variation of the word Halo after it, you know who I'm talking about. Try and keep track of how many I use in this video, I dare you. Hello there guys, gals, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Leipalarden, and we've made it. After so many episodes of epic build-up and intense battles during the season-long Fall of Reach arc, the Pillar of Autumn has found Halo, Master Chief is getting thawed out of cryo, and we're ready to... never mind, sorry. I was talking about the good timeline where season 2 was actually alright. In the lab on Onyx, Miranda is analysing the Forerunner USB stick she found last episode, unveiling what looks to be some kind of cell or spore, likely the Flood. We're also introduced to Janine, some other random scientist from Oni who doesn't really matter because her only purpose is to walk in and talk to Miranda and get infected by the Flood. She begins awkwardly touching other people and spreading it around to others in the building. We see Janine's condition rapidly deteriorate as she goes to shank another of the scientists. In space near the Halo ring, Perez, the other Spartan 3s, and Kai are prepping to jump and board the Covenant ships, which goes about as well as you'd expect as their Condor is blown out of the sky, with several Spartans dying right off the bat. After doing some space acrobatics, they manage to board a Corvette. While on the ship, the remaining Spartan 3s regroup, seeing the bodies of the first wave of Spartans who tried and failed to get through the ship. One Spartan rounds a corner and gets met by 2 grunts on a plasma turret, and all shit breaks loose. The Spartans retreat to the Corvette's hangar and watch on as the UNSC fleet begins to jump out of slip space and engage the Covenant forces. Wow. Where were these assholes about 5 episodes ago when Reach was falling, huh? Watching on from a distance, Jacob Roundel hears all the radio chatter and gets talking to Parangoski, who's just gonna act like she didn't try to have his ass killed on Reach. She tells Chief to focus on Halo as the Covenant are in pursuit of Marquis and Arbiter's ship. Chief is clearly conflicted and wants to help the other Spartans. Jimmy flips his coin, the same that Halsey gave him, and decides to go in and help the others, ignoring Parangoski's orders to get to and secure Halo. Why would Parangoski believe Chief would trust her, let alone follow her orders? If her plan was to always secure Halo, why not do that with the other Spartans and the UNSC fleet? Why depend on Chief alone? It doesn't make sense. Overall, the action on board the Covenant ship with Kai and the Spartan 3s is pretty good here, with Kai and Perez diving in to grab some covey weapons once their mags run dry. There's even a pretty sick moment where after Perez gets injured and Kai is dragging her away, she picks up 2 needlers, Halo 2 style, and goes to town on some elites. With Perez out of action, the UNSC fleet already getting its arse beat, and Kai being the last Spartan standing, she pulls out the engine explodey supernova data spike and very slowly saunters on over to the bridge console and prepares to deliver the final blow. But before she can, who else rocks up to save the day other than Jeremiah Wheels, wearing his helmet for the first time since episode 3. Assessing the situation, Chief makes the call for everyone to retreat and get back to the Condors, while he makes a break for Marquis' ship and the Halo. Halsey is apprehended and brought to Parangoski, who believes she's the only person John will listen to. Parangoski very confusingly tells Chief not to bother going after Marquis' ship, which also has Cortana aboard it, despite it being the only Covenant ship that's going to Halo, which is what she just asked Chief to do before, go to Halo, so why is she suddenly... you know what? Racking my brain over this shit is going to give me an aneurysm. It's not worth it. Meanwhile, Quan groups back with Soren on their ship, who's loading up a scar of some kind. If I had $1 for every time this TV show didn't use a proper Halo weapon, I'd have at least $6, which isn't much, but it's weird that it's happened 6 times. With the intention of storming the base and going back for his wife and Kessler, Quan tries telling Soren that they must leave this place as her schizo visions of the Flood from her cave drawings are kicking back in again. Ackerson gets locked up for running his mouth at Parangoski last episode, where he meets Kessler and Soren's wife, who have also been thrown in the slammer. There's another person in the cells with them who seems to be infected with this Flood plague virus thing, and a little slug crawls out of her mouth. Lovely, that's fine, I didn't want to have dinner anyway. Infiltrating the base, Quan and Soren find several people all frozen in place and not breathing. Inside the cells, the slug woman's body starts twisting and contorting, allowing her to squeeze through the bars, and a claw forces its way out of her body. Ackerson snatches the gun from the guard who was, for some reason, also frozen in place, and puts a few rounds in the infected woman. The guard, however, who was also infected, wakes up and turns his attention to Ackerson, who is coincidentally also out of ammo now. Quan and Soren eventually break Kessler and Lyra out and leave Ackerson behind. Sucks to suck, buddy. Knew you'd get your comeuppance eventually. Nope, fuck. Soren lets him out. What a stupid decision. While escaping, Quan gets cornered by the flood and just closes her eyes, and then the weird old lady mystic pops up again and somehow holds the flood at bay, allowing her to escape. She also explains that the flood knows Quan and wants more than just to subsume her, it wants her to submit, whatever the actual fuck that means. Don't like how they're somehow trying to connect Quan's ancestral bullshit arc from last season to the flood. That pisses me right off. Lyra decides to stay behind as she's also been infected. Well, at least that B-plot has been wrapped up. Finally, Marquis the Arbiter and Cortana get closer to Halo, with Marquis questioning Cortana's ability to predict and analyze what will happen next due to her immense galaxy brain intelligence as an AI. Cortana predicts that Marquis' allegiance is elsewhere and not with the Covenant anymore, and now that Cortana's usefulness has expired and she's refusing to play a song with more cowbell, Christopher Walken stomps out a data chip, presumably killing Cortana. Wow! But not actually. Jeremiah Wheels boards the ship as it begins to enter Halo's orbit. He finds Cortana's broken data chip and can hear her through the ship's systems, but no sign of Marquis or Arbiter, who seem to have left on an escape pod earlier. As the Corvette approaches the ring's surface and looks like it's about to crash, Julian Ovoid's solution is to punch the holographic console? That's a new one. Jackalypse wakes up on the surface of Halo and at the first possible opportunity takes off his helmet again. You don't want to check that the oxygen is still breathable? And for the first time in a while this season, we get a bit of classic Halo music to signify Chief's arrival on the ring, and they also reference the Halo Infinite trailer. Again, like last season, they're really running out of original ideas at this point. Cortana suggests looking for Marquis at a nearby Forerunner spire. Jacquard Cylinders grabs a nearby energy sword and heads off. Perez has also been evac'd with the other Spartan 3s. Somehow they managed to fly away from inside the Covenant fleet without getting shot down. Seems legit. While Kai chucks a George and remains on the Covenant Corvette, steering it off course and into a supercarrier. Though somehow, Kai is still alive, just floating in the vacuum of space among the wreckage. Back on the Onyx base, the flood outbreak is spreading, after everyone was seemingly unaware of it happening for several hours up until this point. First they let Chief run around willy-nilly, now they let the flood go crazy. What kind of security do they have in this place? Halsey manages to escape by the skin of her teeth, though not before getting touched by one of the infected, and Parangoski cops the L. You'd think the flood would be tearing her apart here, but they're all just kind of staring at her with open mouths and writhing around like a bunch of weirdos. It looks really cheap. Miranda meets up with Halsey, who has also been infected. Miranda freezes her in cryo as it will stop the progression of her infection. But I tell you what it won't stop. You from subscribing. Go on. Do it for the awful segue. Back on the Halo, Jude Spirals confronts Christopher Walken and the Arbiter out the front of the Forerunner Spire, which has a control panel of some kind. And we get a pretty neat sword duel. Arbiter pounds the crap out of Chief initially.
Harder, Daddy. What?
But the tide turns when he makes the most of his grapple shot to one-up the Arbiter. Makes you wonder why he didn't do that in the first place, beating him to a bloody purple pulp and finishing him off with an energy sword to the heart. Marquis opens up the spire. God, look at those goofy-ass clown boots she's got on. Those Covenant stylists be crazy into heels, man, I'll tell you. Marquis now evidently knows that the Halo's purpose has always been to wipe out life. Okay. As the UNSC begins descending on the ring, Marquis heads inside the spire and Chief follows soon after, bumping into the installation's monitor, who I really hope isn't Guilty Spark, because the voice actor for him sucks. Nowhere near the level of charisma and charm that Tim DiDarbo brought to the role, and no funky electronic effects on the voice either. Chief puts on his helmet, which is now messed up from the last scene we saw him in, and has a big crack where his face is clearly visible in it, so presumably something happened between him going into the spire's entrance and his meeting with the monitor. Great, so for season 3 we'll have to see Pablo's face all the time. They found a workaround, folks. For fuck's sakes. And of course, the episode ends. So, did it suck? Well, that has got to be one of the most underwhelming season finales for a show I've ever seen. It felt like all the various plot lines were fighting for dominance in this constant tug-of-war, vying to wrap themselves up in a neat little bow while still leaving enough room open for season 3, which, judging from how this ended, is bound to happen, or at least the showrunners are confident enough to believe that they'll get a season 3. I personally was not very happy with the depiction of the Flood. There was a bit of promise there to begin with, but they're just kind of a dumbed down version of the ones in the games. There's not a full body conversion per se, they just get this ugly looking tentacle that pops out of their neck. I had someone comment on my last video saying I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have the budget to do the Flood properly and they made them zombies with black veins or something to that extent. And dead ass, that guy was on the money. They really are just generic looking zombies, and they act like them too. I get that this outbreak is still fairly fresh, but surely they could have thrown in a few more combat forms or something, have a few infection forms scurrying around the place, or at least a couple of scary screeches coming from the combat forms. And how is Miranda not infected? She was the closest contact to that sample, and is the Flood airborne like it is in the Gold timeline? If so, again, why wasn't Miranda infected first? What's the deal with that old mystic bird? Why are the Flood seemingly after Quan? What's their bone to pick with her? Why would they even care about some petty bloodline rivalry that stems back thousands of years, presumably, especially if they don't even have a central intelligence like a Gravemind in place and they're still in the feral stage? Again, aneurysm. I think their appearance also adds to the messiness of this finale. While trying to wrap everything up, they're also introducing an entirely new faction with little to no setup beforehand, aside from some vague references to monsters during Quan's cave rantings. This episode could have been far more focused if they just ended with a Flood tease, rather than having it take up a majority of the episode. All the stuff out in space with the Spartan 3s and Kai was entertaining, I'll admit. It was good to have a proper fight between the Spartans and the Cubbies and seeing a fleet battle, albeit broken up with short glimpses. I still found Parangoski's plan to be so half-assed and nonsensical. John, go to the Halo. Actually, don't go to the Halo. I'm glad she's finally out of the picture. I'm also still unsure what Chief did to survive the ship crash. Was that supposed to be armor lock when he punched the console? If so, why didn't he do that during the fight with the Arbiter? You know, just stand still, lock your armor, and watch him break his hand like an idiot. Also, they really did the Arbiter dirty like that. I guess it just means we're more likely to get the proper Arbiter, Thel 'Vadamee, in the future, and not this sussy imposter. Overall, I just don't think this episode stuck the landing or felt fulfilling, really. That crashed Covey Corvette is a good analogy for this finale, actually. It's an absolute mess. It's too busy being torn between trying to wrap things up while establishing some new stuff for the next season. The action was bare, but enough to hold me over, and the Flood... yeah, the less said about them, the better. Good that we finally got Chief back in his armor with his helmet on for a grand total of 5 minutes. But overall, I reckon a 5 out of 10 would be a very generous score for this episode. I mean, incredibly generous. On further rewatches, I could pivot to something even lower than that. Well, I'm glad that's over. But you see, now the question remains. Do I do another half-hour video breaking down the faults with this season in a consolidated package? That's a rhetorical question. I've already started writing the script. We're going to beat this dead horse one last time, folks. Let's go!